feel sufficiently prepped.
Still, it's gonna be some editing magic in this, Landon. Hi, I'm retired professional triathlete TJ Tollakson, CEO of Diamond Bikes, and today we are going to talk about asthma inhalers. So, for years, well, for decades, asthma inhalers have been super controversial in determining whether they give an unfair advantage or level the playing field for truly asthmatic people.
Vote now on your phones.
There's a huge debate. It's been going on for decades. There have been numerous research studies on this and a lot of contradictory evidence. And so we're going to take a dive into this as a follow-up to our doping theme and gray doping, and where do asthma inhalers fit on this scheme? Well, in general, I would say that asthma inhalers for non-asthmatic people fall into the gray doping category. They're highly abused. They can have some benefit, and we'll get into this in a little bit, especially if they're overused, overdosed, and used on a regular basis. But there's also some really mounting evidence that says they do nothing.
Nothing.
If you're not asthmatic, there's no performance gains. So we'll get into that and let you make your own call on how much of a benefit you think they get. So I'm going to start out with a little story about a legendary female triathlete who went on to marry one of the greatest male triathletes of all time, Emma Snowsill. So I actually first met Emma Snowsill before she was an Olympic champion. I was living in Australia the winter of 2006-2007. And at that time, Emma Snowsill was literally winning just about everything there was. Then she stopped winning. Then she was diagnosed with asthma and she started winning again, including winning an Olympic gold medal at the Beijing Olympics in 2008. Doping? Asthmatic? I'll let you be the judge of that. So we look at the order of events and we can say that, did she have asthma before? Well, she was a world-class athlete. She was winning lots of races and she probably did not have asthma. Something then changed, not exactly sure, but then she became diagnosed with asthma. So this is one of the sticking points for me in this argument. If you're already an elite athlete, if you're already crushing it and performing at your top, you probably don't have asthma.
Suspicious.
But one thing we know for sure is that the prevalence of asthma in elite athletes is 7 or 8 times greater than the prevalence of asthma in the general population. It's certainly compelling and interesting to look into this. So we're going to jump into some of this science of what it looks like. So before we get into that, we're going to say currently there are 2 types of asthma medications. One are bronchodilators, beta-2 agonists, or what those are called, bronchodilators. They smooth and expand the muscles into your airway to help you breathe better. And if you're an asthmatic, you're having constriction, it will relax and smooth that and help you breathe deeper and bigger. Now, one of the arguments with that drug is that if it's working, doing that for an asthmatic, then does a normal person breathe that same bronchodilator and have iron lungs, become superhuman and able to breathe and do all kinds of things, go through the air with my asthma inhaler, so we don't really know what that does. We'll look at the science. The second category is a inhaled corticosteroid. So corticosteroids are common drugs used to treat all kinds of different things. Poison ivy might be one of them. But we're specifically talking about an inhaled version, meaning that you puffed on that and inhaled the drug into your lungs. So we'll look at the 2 of them. We'll look what the science says and we'll dig into this. All right. So published August 12th, 2020. That happened to be my 40th birthday. For anybody out there who cares. In the U.S. Pharmacist, there was a staff article written about approved beta-2 agonists might enhance sports performance in non-asthmatics. But anyway, it goes on to state that bronchodilators are widely prescribed to treat asthma. I'll skip down to the bottom side of this. They set up a very nice study, and they looked at the effect of 2 beta-2 agonists on anaerobic performance in healthy non-asthmatic subjects. And overall, results in the overall analysis indicate that beta-2 agonists improved anaerobic performance by 5%, but the effect was related to dose and administration route. So even the WADA-approved drugs are having a significant performance improving effect, and the non-approved ones, which are still being used and abused, are having an even greater effect. So they're saying they did find some improvements. Obviously we know a whole bunch of people are using this, and still we want to know, why are athletes with asthma outperforming their peers without asthma, and why is the prevalence of asthma 7 to 8 times higher in athletes than it is in the general population?
Why?
The next study we're going to look at here, this is on PubMed. We're just going to go into the abstract of this, but it is pharmaceutical treatment of asthma symptoms in elite athletes, doping or therapy. So the abstract of this states that asthma, exercise-induced bronchoconstriction, and airway hyperresponsiveness are often found in elite athletes, perhaps as a consequence of their sport, or maybe because asthma is a common disorder in young adults. Inhaled beta-2 agonists, IBA, are frequently used in elite athletes, but due to regulations introduced by the International Olympic Committee, the use of anti-asthmatic therapy might change. So at the end of this, they say that anti-asthmatic treatment is necessary for asthmatics, but should not be used by non-asthmatic elite athletes due to both possible systemic effects and furthermore side effects of both inhaled corticosteroids and inhaled beta-2 agonists. They're saying they don't know if it enhances performance, but there are side effects. So if you don't have asthma, you probably shouldn't be using this. Still doesn't answer the question, why do more athletes have asthma than the general population, and why are they outperforming their peers?
The plot thickens.
So the next study we're going to look at is actually the asthmatic athlete inhaled beta-2 agonist, sport performance and doping by Donald C. McKenzie and Kenneth D. Fitch. This goes on to say that the asthmatic athlete has a long history in competitive sport in terms of success and performance and issues related to doping. Well documented are detailed objective tests used to evaluate the athlete with symptoms of asthma or airway hyperresponsiveness in the medical management. This specifically looks at 2002 Salt Lake City Games and the International Olympic Committee's independent asthma panel, which was evaluating whether or not this would work. Provided a standard of care for athletes with respiratory symptoms and led to the discovery that asthmatic Olympic athletes outperformed their peers at both Summer and Winter Olympic Games between 2002 to 2010. We'll look at one more study here, ergogenic effects of inhaled beta-2 agonists in non-asthmatic athletes. The potential ergogenic effects of asthma medication in athletes have been controversially discussed for decades. The prevalence of asthma is higher in elite athletes than in the general population. The highest risk for developing asthmatic symptoms is found in endurance athletes and swimmers. In addition, asthma seems to be more common in winter sport athletes. Until the end of 2009, an exception was only allowed for the substances formoterol, salbutamol, and salmeterol by inhalation, so long as a therapeutic use exemption was filed. Current WADA regulations, I'll jump on these real quick, actually prohibit all forms of salbutamol right now in competition and out of competition, with the exception that it is not prohibited by inhalation up to a maximum of 1,600 micrograms over 24 hours in divided doses not to exceed 600 micrograms over 8 hours starting from any dose. Wow, that sounds confusing, right?
Yes, it's true.
And also sounds really hard to catch somebody from puffing on an inhaler to tell whether or not they are using too much and have too much in their system. But what it is telling me is that out of all this research, they've determined that if you are taking this orally, intravenously, numerous other methods of use, that it is probably performance enhancing, and so it is also high likelihood it could be performance enhancing by using this, especially if it's used in super high doses and over long periods of time. We will go on to this next article, which was in 2010 in Wired magazine, that went on to look at the doping use of and doping accusations by Dara Torres, the then 41-year-old Olympic gold medalist swimmer. Maybe this will pull up. In case you didn't know, we're in a blizzard right now, which is dramatically affecting my internet. It was also dramatically affecting my ability to make phone calls earlier. So we're a little slow here. So in a 2010 article in Wired magazine, it says suspicion lifts over Olympic champions' use of an asthma inhaler. At the 2008 Summer Olympics in Beijing, after adding 3 more medals to her ever-growing collection, many openly wondered how swimmer Dara Torres, then 41 years of age, that's my age, could still dominate the sport at such an age. Torres was more than a decade older than some of her closest competitors, and skeptics questioned which parts of her training regime could possibly allow her to leave younger rivals dog paddling in her wake. Now, new research from a Danish research lab may have finally set the record straight, vindicating the asthma medication that seems to have been falsely accused as a performance-enhancing substance. So the sum of this article is that Dara Torres used a beta-2 agonist, such as salbutamol, and she received a proper therapeutic use exemption. These researchers in Denmark did this test, and they had people inject 40 times higher than normal doses of an asthma inhaler and wanted to see if they had performance enhancing benefits. Did everything exactly the same, and at the end the researchers found that salbutamol, even in extremely high doses, did not give elite athletes any performance boost. Large amounts of salbutamol didn't give the athletes iron lungs, as the men in both groups huffed and puffed as they exercised. They all performed and tired out in similar ways. In fact, the only difference found in the subjects who used the salbutamol inhaler was that they retained drug levels in their urine that were, on average, nearly 3 times higher than the current WADA standards. So there you have it from Wired magazine and a research in Denmark that it does absolutely nothing to elite athletes. Yet we still have this question on, does this work? And in Science Daily, August 3rd, 2020, a type of asthma drug known as beta-2 agonist can boost sprint and strength performance in athletes who don't have the respiratory condition, finds a review and pooled data analysis of the available evidence. So this is clearly what I was talking about earlier. This is where they pooled the data from 34 studies. The results showed that beta-2 agonists as a class improved anaerobic exercise performance in those without asthma compared with dummy treatment, placebo, by 5%. Huge amounts. So I'm going to end with that, and with that I will conclude by saying we still don't know. I would always say that we're going to classify asthma inhalers by the majority of people in endurance sports as gray doping, because at best they have some moderate impact to performance enhancement. It cannot be classified as black and white doping. As referenced in the research papers, asthmatics outperform non-asthmatics in all sports. So why is it that asthmatics are so great? If you're an asthmatic and you're mad at me for saying this, let me hear it in the comments. If you think people are abusing this, also let me know. The facts are there. Thanks for tuning in. You want to hear more on the subject, let me know.